sure? Suppose the bridge ain't there.
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
Hey guys, I just thought that would be a little fun to do as a new open for this video today. This set of videos I'm gonna do. I'm feeling a little in the mood to do some videos. I was thinking of some stuff last night and I was like, yeah, I do want to talk about that kind of stuff. How you guys doing? It's Crusty Old Crow back again to do a different kind of tactical perspective video. And this one I'm basically just calling this one a G.I. Joe classified route report and the threats on route Hasbro, basically, guys. It's kind of going back to my bread and butter days and doing a little bit of recce thinking on what I'm seeing with G.I. Joe Hasbro, classified by Hasbro, and what I've seen in the past, and just trying to tie together what I've heard the representatives at Hasbro say, both at the PulseCon and the Comic Cons, and all the you guys see the updates are out there regularly all over YouTube these days. And this is the era we live in that we didn't live in when we were kids collecting these the first time. This is the information era. So companies can't hide behind a low rate press release like they did back in the 80s. Everything is current. So you have to try and stay current to understand what's going on. And I won't claim that I'm 100% current, guys. What I will claim is I'm 100% interested, and I will look into things and ask the questions, right? So why did I do the Kelly's Heroes thing? It's all about negative waves, right? So one of the first things I got to promise myself is you got to be like Oddball, right? Oddball is not a negative guy. Oddball detests negative waves. And I've always really kind of related with Oddball. So that's why you're not seeing the traditional hats and whatnot today. You're seeing an oddball version of Crusty Old Crow, because he inspired me while I was thinking on Remembrance Day yesterday about negative waves. And I said, yeah, you got to apply that when you think about your interest in G.I. Joe Classified, guys. It's easy to get baited into some negative thinking when you see things creeping up like quality control issues and repaints, or even just maybe overwhelming wave releases that are going current with Hasbro, and that aren't necessarily being received as 100% liked by some. And you can understand why. So I looked at that problem. I said, Ryan, you gotta have a look at that and think to yourself, well, where are we going? What can we see coming? So I'm gonna put my actors away over here, because this is about Tiger Force, and I'm going to go into, it's going to be about Tiger Force. I'm going to do another one about Night Force. I'm going to do another one about Python Patrol. And somewhere in there, I'm going to talk about that Transformers crossover line, because these are all IED threats en route Hasbro right now that I am picking up on. I mean, and when I say an IED threat, I don't mean that thing's going to go off. I mean, you approach it with caution and you define it more, and you come up with your courses of action to deal with it. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with Hasbro these days, because of the information age, and their need to be a bit more transparent than perhaps what the company was back in our youth. So that transparency, I am going to do things like borrow images off the internet, get through all this. But like I said, I relate to Oddball in that I'm going to try and not make them negative. There are courses of action that Hasbro can do every other time, right? And a lot of it is based on the feedback from the fans. So I defy Hasbro to let me know, watch these videos by all these YouTube people that are criticizing or praising your product, and pay attention to the intent of their video. My intent is not to slam Hasbro. My intent is to say the road ahead, you can maneuver down it and get to the end, but it's going to go slower if you don't deal with certain threats right away. So that's a fancy way of introducing it. And like I said, guys, if you watched my last videos, I talked about Remembrance Day on one of them, and it was on a Joe review, but I said I'm a big fan of avoiding negativity. That isn't to say that I am advocating against YouTubers or content creators that are negative in their videos. These are not cheap toys. This is an investment, and I think everybody's allowed to have a voice on their investments if you want to look at them that way. So, without further ado, I am going to get into one of the IED threats I think is high, and why is Tiger Force. Okay, so one of the things we know is coming is with every figure you should have the original, because that's you dance with who brought you to the ball, right? And you're appealing to that originality market and modernizing it, so you got to get your original line figures out of the way. Yet with Tiger Force, you came out the gate and said, we're doing this one early and we're going to persist and keep feeding into it. So the first thing I had to ask myself was, what was Tiger Force? Because as I told you in other videos, guys, growing up, I was all about the toy. I couldn't get the cartoon where I lived in Kingston. I didn't have cable and I didn't have much television resources growing up. And I had some of the comics, but I couldn't consistently buy them until later. And that's a problem. It goes with the marketing strategy, is that when you bought the G.I. Joe comic, eventually, you were, especially with an undiagnosed severe ADHD, what that introduced me to was there was other things that interested me other than G.I. Joe once we got comics into the equation. So I collected G.I. Joe through the 80s, but into the late 80s and on, I was very much into the X-Men, right? Because G.I. Joe introduced me to comics, and that took me to a comic store, and all of a sudden I saw Colossus and this Canadian Wolverine, right? So I digress. But when I came out of that G.I. Joe collecting and started collecting comics, that was the same time Tiger Force was starting to come onto the market. And I talked about this in comments with other guys, that Tiger Force to me just seemed like a cheap grab at money, because they were all repaints of something that had done moderately to great on the market, and now they were ruining them with these repaints for some. I liked some, but not all, not most, right? And that is, it's important to remember that feeling, because I know other guys remembered that back in the 80s, because that's kind of where that feeling is going with the current Tiger Force. It is a lot of feedback of both positive and negative, but you can really hear the negative when it comes. So one of the guys that has come out and they immediately had a repaint of, and this was released earlier in the month of October, I think they talked about it, and they might have shown pictures online. I might have shown pictures at some point, I don't think I did, but the Tunnel Rat repaint conundrum. So they've done Tunnel Rat, but they've done them in Night Force, right? And I'm just warning you guys out there, don't be so upset about it, because this is what they could have come out the gate with, was a Tiger Force Tunnel Rat. And if you think you were upset with the Flint Tiger Force repaint, then good news, they went with the Night Force repaint for Tunnel Rat right off the hop, right? And it's not to say one won't come, but it isn't. So I asked myself, what is Tiger Force? They're a jungle warfare kind of team that they struck together to fight Cobra in the jungles, right? So these were all advanced jungle specialists. So I was like, okay, well, I read up a little bit about that. And then I started asking, okay, well, what was that roster? Because let's see what we already have and maybe where we're going on the upcoming releases. So if we look at the original Tiger Force, oh, sorry, that's a Night Force. I'm going to go back. If we look at the original Tiger Force roster, the truth of the matter is we do have a lot of it already. So there we go. I'm going to quickly remind you guys that I am just pulling images up off Google, and I don't own any of these. I believe this is from Joepedia, which is like Wikipedia for G.I. Joe, and it's amazing. And just a quick reminder to me to be like, oh, I could take a while on here just being nostalgic, and then remember I was there for a reason, and that was to dig up Tiger Force. So they were a special unit within the G.I. Joe team called up for secret and highly dangerous missions, right? So in the remote jungle, And Cobra apparently was set up in the jungle and they designed a team about it. So let's talk about which figures we already have. So in their roster, we have Bazooka. I just don't have the Tiger Force variant of Bazooka, but one of the original Tiger Force was Bazooka, so he's represented. Duke, this is the Tiger Force Duke. They released that with the Ram variant repaint, right? And I think for the white version of like what they call the Tiger Force Bazooka, just the white with the red helmet, I thought that was fair. I thought that was a good repaint, and it was true to the original figure, right? Same as with the Duke, I thought they did a great job with that. Next, we'll talk quickly about my Slack and Idle Dusty here. Anyways, yeah, Dusty was another one where they did that right. They do them as much as they could to the figure, right? And then they did a good job with his. I just don't have that one again, but I do plan on getting it at some point. I wasn't sure about getting Bazooka and Dusty, but once I ever get a stem where I'm on top of the Joes that are being released and I can go back and get a few backs from Toys R Us or somebody, those are on my list. Flint over here, I only have the first release of Flint, or the original classified release, not the original, or not the Tiger Force variant, and with good reason. If I want to pick it up, it burns in my hand, and I pick it up and I think, oh man, like I would do a review on it, but there's that negative aspect, guys. Like I don't necessarily love doing negative reviews. They're out there, but my God, I feel like just before I even open the box, I have so much to say about the Flint that I'm holding off because I don't want to pay $35.99 to say that stuff. So he's low on my list, right? So the original Tiger Force Flint, though, I don't think was that paint, unless on my, I think it was a darker tone of almost red. If I'm looking at this picture right, and guys, I am colorblind, but I'm just blowing it up, and I'm apprehensive to do these because I don't own these images, like I said. But that to me is more of an autumn red, right? And what they went with was more of a brighter orange, and that was a failed repaint in my eyes. And they also did a horrible job with the cam paint. People weren't ready for that kind of bold stroked cam job on top of those colors. So next up on the list, like we know we've got Bazooka, Duke, Dusty, Flint. We're not worried about Tiger Force releases for 4 of them already, but this is 2 coming up that I already want to talk about because they also go with like another conversation I've been having with others. Frostbite. Okay, you have Snow Serpent, you have Snow Viper, not Snow Viper, pardon me, the Arctic Bat, you have Snow Job. We are due for Frostbite. You guys heard in another video, I'd like to see that be the HasLab project to like one of the Tier Unleashed figures is an original paint scheme Frostbite coming out with the Arctic, the Arctic Cat, I think it is called. Yeah. And then maybe Blizzard and Iceberg in that set. The problem being is that if that's going to be the only way you get the original, people aren't going to be happy, right? Anytime you make the original out of reach, you're going to get negative feedback. So maybe this Tiger Force variant of him would go well, but my God, I don't want a Tiger Force Snowcat, and I don't want Tiger Force Arctic. I need Arctic troops developed by classified line at Hasbro to validate the investment of buying things like the Arctic Bat and the Snow Serpents, right, and Snow Job. You kind of want to keep that going a bit. So I feel like Frostbite's a trap, and he's a possible IED out there because the temptation and the low-hanging fruit is to make him in the Tiger Force variant first, like you did with Recondo. And then my whole plan of releasing them as HasLab becomes even more problematic because people are now demanding you put him direct to shelf, right? So you see where conundrum. Lifeline is another one you need to have your original figure versus the Tiger Force variant, and you have that problem again, but he's easier to solve because you want a demand of medical guys. We are going to get Doc coming up in an upcoming wave that has been hinted at. I think the digital renders are out or coming, and you know, once the digital renders there, it's the snowball is halfway down the hill. So Snowball. You see what I did there? Arctic. Yeah. Okay. So Lifeline, I don't think he's a possible IED threat. In fact, I think he might be a reward. Especially if they do the original first and then wait a year, do the Tiger Force variant. But if they did the Tiger Force variant first, I feel like he's one where if you were bold enough to step away from what you did from Flint and try it, you need to step away and try it again with Lifeline, with that bright orange and whatnot, and make sure that his accessories don't get ridiculous as far as a rehash of other guys. It makes sense for Lifeline. You got to do Lifeline right, because we went, or do the original first so you can get it in there with Doc. So there's the low level IED threat. Frostbite, I think, is a high level IED threat. Recondo, we already have, and he's represented up here. And then we know that Recondo is going to get a retro card version, which I talked about in one of my earlier videos about the upcoming waves and what we've learned. So we're not worried about Recondo. Recondo's not an ID threat, and quite honestly, Recondo kind of sold me a little bit on what Tiger Force was capable of producing by giving us the original Recondo, which was like this almost exception to Tiger Force as far as how cool they could look. And I was a huge fan of Recondo when I had him as a kid. Yes, I was disappointed this wasn't original, but when I looked at him, he had everything that made him Recondo, just different color. And I was okay with the color. Roadblock, we know they are looking at another variant of Roadblock down the road for Tiger Force again. And that has been hinted at a couple of times, I think. But whether or not that's actual true or just conjecture, I've heard more than one video kind of hint at that's been talked about. But we have so much Roadblock out there. We have a couple of attempts that built up Roadblock. You know, I'm a big fan of my Roadblock over here. That one didn't go over as well with a lot of other fans, but mainly because of the weapons loadout. And then the Viper Island Roadblock was the one, the heavy duty Roadblock was the one that everybody really liked. It had that bump helmet. He had the Gatling gun. He had a drum of ammo attached to the Gatling gun, unlike with the Ram cycles. So, you know, it made sense for him that he was using it. Things like that. So hopefully if they do attack another Tiger Force roadblock, that Gatling gun comes back, that bump helmet comes back, because those were successful, I think, as far as the fan appeal of all the roadblocks out there. And you'll notice I won't even mention the first roadblock in the series. I think it might even be number one in the series, Fortnite roadblock, which you could probably pick up for just showing up someday at a store for nothing. Tripwire is going to be another low level to moderate level IED. Tripwire back in the day did join Tiger Force, and I'm not gonna lie, guys, when I got Tripwire, I had the original, and I didn't understand Tripwire right away, but I kind of liked him. I liked his mines. I liked his minesweeper. I liked what he could bring to the table for a sneak attack, laying those mines when I was playing with my friends in the sandboxes or wherever we played. But how I've seen Tripwire received on the market through the classified line right now, it confounds me. And I'm a little bit, I guess I would say, biased, because I do like the actual figure they got. I like all the variants of the new upcoming Tripwire, and his drone, whatever that thing's called, the acronym, and the actual swap out armor choices. Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about the Hurt Locker comparison. Guys, I'm not a fan of the movie Hurt Locker. I think it's a overblown, over criticized, and overhyped movie. It was just okay. It wasn't the most realistic standard of movies, as far as I found it, but the equipment that they were using was cool, and now it's reflected on Tripwire. So I hear negative comeback on that, and I'm like, yeah, people will not like a Tripwire Tiger Force, I think. I don't think they're going to run that one until the very end, or they get some really great ideas on how to make it just slightly more appealing. I don't know. I almost feel like that Tripwire Deluxe set with the armor swap outs should have given you a Tiger Force swap out helmet and plating for one of the vests, so you could almost just get that out of the way. You know what I mean? Like you did with the bat, you had that chest piece. Well, you've got this whole extra armor riggins for Tripwire, and then he's got his regular breastplate, and I think a clip-on breastplate piece that could have added to one of those two with the Tiger Force stuff is as close as you needed to get to this, right? Just a little square that clipped on, and then you could have gotten 2 figures for the price of 1 in that deluxe set. You're already making it a deluxe set, you know, get rid of the rat. That's my opinions on that. Sky Striker's another guy who's in the original whatever 88 line. I am assuming he's a pilot for one of the vehicles, the probably the X30 or whatever. No opinions and no sight on him coming if he is just a pilot for a vehicle, because if we were to talk about pilots and vehicles and singular figures release, we have to look at Cover Girl and Copperhead. And we have to look at those almost as like a promissory note from Hasbro that there would be vehicles coming. If you were to suddenly add Sky Striker to that, we would have to add them to the list. Now, does that mean that they will not get to those vehicles? I think they will. I think after they see what happens with the Vamp and the market there and the SMS, once they bounce around how HasLab products are actually driving things and what retail's driving them back against, it's possible you could see these vehicles like the Wolverine or the Water Moccasin or the X30 or whatever on the retail shelf based on their small size. Singular driver vehicle. Yeah, okay, maybe. Tiger Force went on after that. You know, over the years, they got developed, and now they came with more figures in 2003. Now, the guys, clearly I was out of the market after then, collecting X-Men comics and growing out of Joe's. And it's funny when you're 13 and you say you grew out of Joe's. For us, it was, well, who did it first in your circle of friends? Because you all joined after, right? And then it was, you still liked Joe. You really did. You still had that childish part of it with you in that obsession, but you were more into playing road hockey or collecting comics or collecting hockey cards or whatever you were doing back in those days, socializing, maybe dating girls, all that other crap. And maybe you weren't on the forefront of what you know, guys, I still really like G.I. Joe. So I gave mine to my cousin, more or less, because that was the only way you could really keep tabs on them being okay. That was my heartfelt collection, and that's why I did it. I gave them to my cousin to be like, yeah, they're okay, right? So by 2003, I was gearing up to go to Afghanistan and all that other stuff. I was married. I wasn't collecting Joes. They had a whole line of Tiger Force that came out after that that was all muted down, right? Now, how these were received, one, you know, these were new Tiger Force, so they added new names like Stalker, Dial Tone, Big Brawler, Jinx, Wild Bill, Wreckage. I have no idea how those were received. I am a bigger fan of kind of how they went about the Tiger Force colors, muting them down a lot more, but overall, nothing really impressed me about Tiger Force as they went into 2004. That's when I headed off to the old sandbox Afghanistan, because they went back to those bright orange colors. And so the reason, in my mind, this is when the market was failing anyways for Joe, and the figures had more of a niche collectability to them, as much for old school collectors than it ever did for children. And maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe the American market was very different, and I just wasn't paying attention. But I look at what the public sentiment was over the 90s and 2000s, and if you think about things like Iraq, 9/11, Afghanistan, all the Middle Eastern crises, everything that was going on in the world, and then what was going on in places like the White House and here in Canada in Parliament, and what the political tempo was. And then you start to throw in the evolution of woke culture, and you can see that the temptation of G.I. Joe was starting to fade away, right? And if for us niche collectors, I'm sure it was still there. But you also had to look at what was going on in modern culture with gun violence and gun legislation and the lobbyists for or against, right? And ask parents who felt passionately one way or the other about those, did you want to buy some G.I. Joes based on modern military with guns that come with them for your kid today? And I'm sure that's a lot different than if you asked them in 1982. So yeah, I call that I looked at those as some of the darker days, and I know that during those times, Hasbro and G.I. Joe, they bounced around property. They did a lot of experimentation. Some were hit, some were missed. They always tried to, you know, keep going with that trifecta of the comic and the cartoon. And then the toys, keep it going. I know Sigma 6 came around and that had some reception. That wasn't horrible, apparently. I have no idea. I know the comics had G.I. Joe Devil's Due, and apparently that was like a revelation of G.I. Joe, putting it more. I think what the company IDW was doing was throwing Joe in more in a covert, darker world, and I thought that was pretty cool. But when I'm looking at the Tiger Force line now, this assessment is that the IED threat is moderate as far as what they can do, because now, do they follow through and go ahead and go to the 2003 line and continue to give you repaints on repaints? I think they're going to at some point. I think at some point they're going to do all the originals, the basically 82 through, call it 88, 89. They'll get through all that, and they will know that they have winded their market by that point. Because I don't see them relenting on repaints, remolds, reuses, because it's economic to do that. It's lucrative, you know. Yeah, I see Tiger Force leading into another generation down the line of additions, like definitely I could see them going in with Alpine after Alpine comes out, and Mutt, you know. Those guys are coming, and once they're out there, you saw the tunnel rat, you have to be ready for an immediate repaint. And Tiger Force is low-hanging fruit because they're already well established. Same with Beachhead. I'm surprised the Tiger Force Beachhead didn't come out just to call us over till the classified one comes out. And even then, who knows? The classified one, I've heard rumors, and I can't remember where I heard them, if it was on Viper Island or another Pulse Con or something, that there might be a Night Force Beachhead is more what they're designing with the retro. I have no idea what to expect when it comes to Tiger Force and where they're going. I just know that there's a lot of pitfalls, because you're hearing exactly what you were saying back in the 80s. Some of them look cheap. Some of them are becoming cheap. Tiger Force Flint for me is a real display of it, because you made some choices on that one, and those choices were risky, but you doubled down on them. You did the campaign and the shirt and the beret, and then you went and you ad hoc'd his kit from Recondo, like we don't give a shit. Here you go, have some extra stuff. You didn't develop any new stuff. You just focused on new paint, and that paint was like watching Andy Warhol throw up on my toy collection. So you can expect me to be a little apprehensive, and I'm trying to be positive, guys. Negative waves, right? But woof, woof, don't you dare pursue that with Tripwire right now. You have a big enough problem kind of selling him on some people. So yeah. Moderate IED threat with Tiger Force. Guys, that's going to be it for this part 1 of this series. I am going to start talking about the part 2 in the next video, which is I'm going to approach Night Force next and talk about that. You'll notice I didn't drag vehicles into this, because that extends this conversation much longer than I wanted it to. So if you like this video, if you kind of on the same wavelength with me on this stuff, and you're okay with my ramblings, you go ahead and like. If you really like it and you're new to my videos, pound that subscribe button. I'm more than happy to have you there. And as you guys are seeing in the comment section, you know, you challenge me, fight me, bro. Okay, and I'll happily take the blows you got to give because I want to hear that other perspective that's out there, especially from the U.S. market, because what this series did down there is very different than I think what this series did up here in the north for us, right? So, you know, keep it coming. Anyways, that's it for Crusty Old Crow. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.